If you've ever been into books, movies, TV shows, fictional characters, real life characters even, anything really, you've probably found somewhere on an online space fanfiction. And if you're thinking to yourself, I've never done that, that's a no-no. I ain't getting involved in the fanfiction realm. Let me ask you one question. Have you seen Twilight? Have you watched the After movie? Have you read 50 Shades of Grey or watched 50 Shades of Grey? If you answered yes to any of those questions, you have consumed some form of fanfiction, because 50 Shades of Grey is a Twilight fanfiction, which is Twilight is a chemical romance fanfiction, and then After is a One Direction fanfiction that was turned into a movie. So, you have consumed fanfiction at some point in your life, without your knowledge or with your knowledge. And today I would like to just talk about the inner workings of evolutions of fanfiction, in my opinion, of being in a bunch of different fandoms, and also just some funny fandom tropes that, like, I think are so funny and so quintessential of the mid-2000s that we don't have anymore. So, where did fanfiction originate? I personally believe that fanfiction has been around since, like, Elvis, because I think Elvis had some freaky fans. But I also do think it was around for Beatlemania. But if we're looking on an online sense of live documentation of people claiming the first fanfiction, we can date it back to the 1960s with Star Trek. Because apparently people were making zines or zines for Spock and the other guy that I'm blanking his name on. Fake fan. That's like the first really known, like, documented fanfiction. But if we're talking like something that's been archived that you can find, in 1998, fanfiction.net went live on the internet, and a lot of people were posting on there. I, to this day, can find some really, really good Diagnosis Murder, Murder, She Wrote, and MASH fanfics on there, which is really nice. We'll talk about that later. And then in 2006, I find it crazy that this site is older than AO3, Wattpad was created. And then in 2009, some people say it's 2008, but 2009 it was an open beta archive for Archive of Our Own. And so those three sites really became popular for sharing fanfiction online. Some are better than the others. AO3 I personally regard as being a well-respected fanfiction site, in the sense that you're going to find all the really good, well-crafted novels on there that you're thinking to yourself, why am I getting this for free? Fanfiction.net has some really good gems in there, but a lot of abandoned fics on there because it's like of that time, and a lot of shorter ones. And then Wattpad is kind of the yow, like crazy, like what is happening, like middle school-esque XD random lols like type shit. And also a lot of abandoned fics where they'll be like, oh, to be continued, and then never continued for like the next 6,000 years. So those are the big three. But a lot of people also have posted fanfiction on LiveJournal. I wasn't around for LiveJournal, so I'm not really familiar with that space. Quotive, which I always assumed was just for, like, quizzes. And then you got people posting on Tumblr, but, like, we're just going to be talking about the main three. So one of the biggest things I want to discuss today is the lovely fanfiction tropes that came about in the mid-2000s, because I think they're just so quintessential and so, like, of their time. So essentially, in the mid-2000s, so like 2010s, One Direction came on the scene, right? We had our own little version of like another Beatlemania with like One Direction. But at the same time, you had a big boom of British YouTubers. Like you had Thatcher Joe, Zoella, Elfie Day, Casper Lee, Dan and Phil, they were big ones. Troye Sivan, like you had all these like big ones, right? And with that came a lot of fanfiction revolving around those people. And also at the same time, you also had people writing fanfiction for just bands, Super Hulock. So my personal favorite tropes when I talk about fanfiction to anyone about the 2014-2015 time of the pop culture, is you were either being YN, which was essentially a self-insert. And my favorite thing about self-inserts that have evolved since then is back in the day, a lot of people where they would either do two things. One, they were literally self-inserting their own name. So it would be, hypothetically, Savannah, and they would just write it in their whole, like, whatever, and then post it on, like, let's say, Wattpad. And anyone who was reading it was like, okay, I either have to substitute my own name for Savannah, or I just have to read about Savannah getting whatever with this band. Or the other option was kind of like a Mad Libs, where it was like YN, so literally the Y/N is doing blah blah blah, and then it'd be like they would get like crazy and like convoluted at certain points, because it would be like Y/hair color, or Y/eye color, and just at random points in the story, and you just had to like fill in the blank. But so there were a lot of different tropes, and my favorite tropes, my favorite tropes, were you were being adopted by whoever, or you were being sold. And so a big thing would be like, YN was sold to One Direction for crack. And it was like, why are we being sold to a boy band? And also, there's a meme that's been going around recently that I've been seeing, where it's like, no one is questioning why YN's mom is selling us to a boy band. But I think the real question should be, why is a boy band buying a whole person? And that's the real question here. Another one would be being adopted. I saw ones back in the day where it would be us going to a concert and us being the pick-me, manic pixie dream girl, you know, whatever, with our book, and not caring and not being like interested in the band that we were seeing live. And it was like, then why are you even here at the concert? Why did you get a concert ticket if you didn't even like the band, you know? And then they just see you from the stage reading your book, and they're like, do you want to go on tour with us? And you're just like, okay. Also, the biggest thing to differentiate the 2014-2015 mid-2000s fanfiction boom was YN always had messy hair in a bun and Converse, or like beat up shoes. And then I also really liked some fanfics. I was like a really angsty kid, and I was really into band fanfics and YouTube fanfics. And for some reason, a lot of people were killing off band members, or I've even read some where the reader themselves was being killed off. I swear, I cannot find it anywhere, but I swear it's locked in my brain. I read a Dan and Phil fanfiction back in the day, and the whole fanfic was them getting ready for the day. Ended up at a cemetery at our grave, and that's how the fanfic ended. And I'm like, I know we depressed individuals in this fandom, but what are we doing? A lot of weird fanfics would come out in that time period as well. A lot of code words for Dead Dove Donate, which is essentially like terrible fanfiction, where it's like, if you don't want to read it, don't fucking touch this. These types of fanfic, they became like memes in fandom. So I'm gonna harp on the Dan and Phil fandom because I was in that fandom. I'm still in that fandom. But okay, so I'm gonna harp on them, but I'm also gonna harp on the Panic at the Disco fandom as well. So there was a fanfic that somebody wrote back in the day called The Milkfic. And they wrote it specifically for Panic at the Disco, but so they wrote it explicitly for that fandom, and it leaked into other fandoms. One of the fandoms it leaked into was the Dan and Phil fandom. Now, the milkfic is a quintessential terrible fanfic. Really disgusting, really smutty, really gross. Like, I don't know why we were reading it at the age of, like, 13, 14, 15 years. And then, with the Dan and Phil fandom, people also wrote a fanfic called the Hatfic. Again, I wonder why were we reading this? And then somebody wrote the Skinfic. And again, why were we reading this at that young of an age?
I need to make a statement for the record that I personally did not read the milkfic, skinfic, but I have read the hatfic. And the only reason I read it was because I had, I watched somebody read it on YouTube. Don't recommend it.
They were very smutty, really disgusting, really gross fanfics. And it starts to make you wonder, should there be any... I know it's like I am very much a component of a person that I think fanfiction is a great sense of catharsicism and a great sense of creative writing. And I really don't want there to be that much of a, censoring of it. I really do think you just need to, like, know your tags and know how to tag things. But when you're referring to those three fics in general, it's like, yeah, I don't know what we were doing back in the day. Now, how I think fanfiction has evolved is we've definitely left the realm of RARXD self-insert fanfics. We've definitely left that realm, and depending on the type of fandom you're in now, it can either be a sense of catharsicism, or I've seen with the MASH fandom on both AO3, Tumblr, and fanfiction.net. A lot of people in that fandom are writing really, really, really historically accurate, well-researched fanfics. So, like, for example, I have a Tumblr mutual who wrote a fanfic several years ago, and the fanfic was supposed to be in the 1960s, and it was supposed to be post-war. It was supposed to be Hawkeye, which is the main character, BJ, who's the main character, and BJ's daughter, who's, like, a hypothetical character who's, like, talked about but we never see, going to Disney. And this person decided they were going to make this historically accurate, so they did a lot of research about the foods you would eat at Disney, how much a ticket costed, what type of rides were there, and it was really well done, really well researched. I loved every second of it. And then you got the people who do the catharsis that I do personally with all my writing. I catharsize and just take whatever shitty thing or terrible thing that's happening in my life and plop it into a fanfic.
Editing me here. I have found that the fandom that does the most catharsis fanfic writing is the One Chicago fandom, which is Chicago PD, Chicago Med, and Chicago Fire. Those three shows are the most consistent in people writing catharsis.
I support it. I enjoy that there are people out there who have fanfiction written about them who support it, and are very much like, yeah, write it. Don't show it to me, but write it. Like self-expression, creative writing, get it out, do it. And that's what I wanted to make this video about. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.